Hello, you are listening to the Capsule in Conversation podcast, dedicated to women and their well-being. I'm Natalie Anderson, and today I'm joined by menopause doctor and co-author of the #1 best-selling book, Menopausing, Dr. Naomi Potter, to talk unlocking perimenopause and taking ownership of our health and well-being post-40. So sit back, relax, and get ready to join us in our conversation. Hello all and welcome to a brand new series, Series 8 to be exact. God knows where the years have gone, eh? Series 8, that's 4 years in. Well, I am absolutely thrilled to be bringing you a new lineup of fantastic guests who will all be bringing their own unique stories and expertise in health and well-being to our chats. And kicking us off today is one of the leading doctors in perimenopausal and menopausal health and the co-author of the highly acclaimed book Menopausing with Davina McCall, an NHS GP for over 16 years and the founder of online support platform Menopause Care. She is one of the most recognised doctors helping women to feel empowered and informed as they transition into a new phase of life. She is the brilliant Dr. Naomi Potter. Hi, Naomi.
Hello. Wow, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to welcome you today. And let me tell you, when we announced that you were an upcoming guest, our inbox went absolutely mad. I've never had so many questions for a doctor, so much excitement. So thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, I'm absolutely thrilled. Now, we've slowly been lifting the lid on menopause on this podcast for a couple of years now, but it feels like the conversation really is ramping up, isn't it? I mean, what's your take on that?
It's amazing. So the last 18 months, probably it's really taken a turn. And then even in the last 6 months, it's just gone bananas, which is fantastic. It's been given the airtime that it deserves. But it kind of makes you reflect back on how it was just like 2 years ago and 3 years ago, where when I told people that I was a menopause doctor, they would kind of look at me and be like, well, you know, what's that?
Yeah.
And why? Whereas now it's, everyone's like, yeah, okay, I understand what that's about. So it is incredible how in just such a short space of time, there's been such a massive increase in airtime and discussion about it. It's brilliant.
I mean, for me personally, the work that I've been doing, like you, it makes me really reflect on the women that have gone before that haven't perhaps had that level of care. When you see how many women are desperately in need of care and support, and I know one of the things you're passionate about, and so am I, is the younger end of, educating women like post 35 into perimenopause. When I think of some of my friends even that are now in their late 40s that are now on HRT, but those early years where they didn't know what was really going on, it galvanizes me to work that bit harder as well, just to kind of make sure we are catering to that younger end as well. Is that the same for you?
I think there's two lost generations, aren't there? There's the generations above us, so women in their kind of mid to late 50s and beyond who just had practically no care with their menopause, and then yes, there's the women who are, it's even the under 50s, because people still think that menopause happens when you're in your 50s, when really it happens in your 40s. For most people, and then the younger women who, I did a post about this on Instagram on Saturday, and the number of messages that I've had from women in their 30s just being told that this is how I feel, but nobody's taking me seriously. They're telling me that I'm too, I'm being told that I'm too young. Everybody tells me I'm too young. My family, my friends, the doctors, everybody. And those are the women that actually we really need to grab and treat, because they're the ones that are going to end up with an extra decade of no estrogen for bone protection and cardiovascular protection. And it's so important that there is awareness. Not everybody with symptoms it's not going to be the perimenopause in everybody with symptoms, but there are thousands and
absolutely.
thousands.
I mean, I did because we've got an event happening called the Perimeno Meetup, which is very much about that. It's kind of trying to raise awareness. It's so that for women like late 30s onwards, to kind of say, look, we really need to get going with this conversation. And then we made a little reel and I put it on my Instagram, and I had a couple of guys which have since been removed, but a couple of guys saying, aren't you a bit young for this? You're a bit young for this. You're a bit young to be going through the menopause. And then I wrote this massive reply, and then I saw that the person had kind of deleted the message, because the whole point is about getting this conversation out earlier. But from that reel, I've had quite a few direct messages from women saying, oh my God, you've hit the nail on the head. This is me. I'm talking to my school mum friends about this. You know, it's my school mum chat at the minute. It's that we're all, you know, we've got kids that are maybe 7 or 8, and we're all kind of feeling a bit off it. Do you think it could be perimenopause? I am in my early 40s. And I'm like, well, that sounds, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor, so obviously go and get checked out. But from your experience, what would you think?
We see, so my clinic is predominantly filled with women in their 40s. I mean, yes, of course we have women in their 50s, but the majority of women are in their 40s. It's, you know, so the definition of the menopause is a year after you have your last period, but you have symptoms way before then. And it's almost the time of, you know, the perimenopause gives you more symptoms in many ways because of the hormonal turbulence. It's much easier to treat women when they're postmenopausal because you've got a kind of blank sheet. But it absolutely is. And, you know, it's really frustrating when you hear kind of people saying, oh, you know, everyone's just jumping on the perimenopause bandwagon. Perimenopause doesn't exist. It's just, you know, it's a media show. It's a money making, you know, enterprise. It isn't. And it's gaslighting, and it's really, really distressing because you have women who are juggling, you know, young children, elderly parents, careers, families, relationships, and they are on their knees and they can't get help, and that's what's really, really distressing. It just needs to be accepted, I think.
Absolutely, and I'm totally with you, like with this. So I would think that my first symptoms started because I can have really good months where I feel absolutely brilliant, and then I know, oh my God, my estrogen's really low. I can tell in my own mind, in my mental health, in my physical health, and I can tell it's sometimes a bit like a yo-yo, and it's really hard work. And when I first started talking about this to my friends, it was a bit like, well, you've always kind of had anxiety, and, you know, maybe it's a bit of that. And I'm like, it's my age. I'm telling you, I'm not crazy. Like, I was 38, I'm now 42 this year, and I definitely know that this is the phase of life for me. And I want to be able to chat to women and let them know that actually, just because it's called perimenopause, like what you were saying, there's a long way off before the actual menopause for a lot of women. Some women, obviously, I know it can be a lot quicker, but for many women, it could be up to 10 years, maybe. It could be, you know, longer than that. So we need to learn how to manage these symptoms whilst juggling young children, like you've said. You know, for me, it's the chat at the school gates. The fact that we're having this chat whilst taking our primary school kids to school, that says a lot to me. And so, like you were saying about being like more of a lost generation in terms of the women that need to be facilitated. What would you say for women are the first telltale signs that they should look out for?
It varies for everyone. It does. So there's so many symptoms, and like you said, symptoms come and go. But I mean, so the classic symptoms are hot flushes and night sweats and periods changing, but you don't always experience them, and you can have them, and then they can come and go. If you're not feeling yourself, and although that's a really non-specific symptom, it's actually I think it's quite a good one, because you can have kind of specific symptoms that, so, you know, say you've got palpitations or heartburn, or they're all quite kind of, they could be lots of different reasons why you've got those, but they're not feeling yourself. It tends to be fairly universal. It tends to be that whatever other symptoms you have, if you've got that as well, it's often perimenopause. But I mean, the thing is, there are big things like palpitations and heartburn and eye problems and all the other symptoms that are very systems localized. It's important to get them checked out because they can easily be other things.
Yeah.
But But likewise, if you come back from having investigations and nobody can really find what's going on, then you've got to think, is it hormones? Because it often is.
Well, that's the thing, because when your hormones are fluctuating, 1 month you could be fine, and then the next month it could be like on the floor. So it's hard, isn't it, to pinpoint? And I mean, we've got quite a few listener questions anyway, and I'll move on to them. But one of the questions was that a lady did go to her doctor, and the bloods came back fine, but then she was like, but I still felt awful, went back again, and they changed, but then the doctor's still telling me I'm too young for menopause. Well, too young for menopause. And let me just find the lady. I think the lady was, she's in her early 40s. She's just put, she said, I'm in my early 40s. Oh no, sorry, I'm 45. That was it. She said, so she's kind of coming up to mid 40s, but the doctors told her that she's far too young to be menopausal. But she said, 1 month her bloods were okay, and then the next they were really low. And she feels in herself, from everything that she's listening and reading about, that she's perimenopausal. Now, if your doctor says that to you, what do you do?
I know, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So firstly, if you're over 45, you don't actually need bloods at all to,
Right.
If you've got typical symptoms, then it is, it's perimenopause until proven otherwise. If you're under 45 and you have bloods taken, then it's important to exclude other causes, and you can look at hormones, but it's just a snapshot in time, and they will change. It changes throughout a month, and that's normal. And it's really hard to, unless you've got a very, very high FSH, then it's really hard to use it as a diagnosis. But the bottom line really is that if you've got no other cause and you're still feeling like that, then you can trial HRT and see whether that makes you feel better. If it makes you feel better, the chances are that's what the underlying cause is.
And if your doctor's not offering that to you, though, if they're saying, they're not wanting to investigate, if you're in your early 40s, what do you do then? Do you go to another doctor? Where do you look?
I think it's, if you're at a practice whereby there are a number of different doctors within that practice, your first port of call would be to try a different doctor within that practice. I mean, lots of doctors have got different kind of specialist areas, and that's probably the easiest thing to do. But if you are in your early 40s and you really think that that's what's going on, it's important to get treated. So I would ask for a referral. It's it's really, really important that you replace estrogen if you can.
And like you were saying, it's not just, like things like bone health, these kind of things, that can rapidly kind of deteriorate as we age. And if you're not getting that estrogen at a much quicker rate, so it's not just kind of about even mental health or those other things. There's lots of physical things going on too. I mean, going back to HRT, because, a lot of women do find it either aging or frightening, or there's a lot of like stigma attached in a lot of ways to it. There's obviously been a lot of what's the word, developments over the last decade. I mean, can you just myth bust some of the things around it? Like, for example, can you have it when you're younger? Is that something that you can absolutely look into?
Absolutely, and it's important to. So if you are, if you're a woman in your late 30s or early 40s and you are perimenopausal or menopausal, then as long as you can have estrogen, so for example you haven't got breast cancer, it is really important to. You're just replacing the hormone that would ordinarily be there, and it's important to maintain bone density and to keep your heart and your blood vessels in good condition. So it is really, really important to find a doctor that can identify that and help.
And the various types of HRT as well. So, for example, there's gels. Am I right in thinking there's sprays, there's patches? Are they different strengths, or what's that area?
So there's different types of HRT in the sense that there's oral HRT, so that's estrogen in the form of a tablet that you swallow, or there's something called transdermal estrogen, which it means that you absorb it through the skin. And within that group, there's patches, gels, and sprays, and they all deliver the same hormone, just in a slightly different preparation. So some women prefer to use a gel, which is it looks a bit like antibacterial gel. It smells a bit like antibacterial gel, and you literally just rub it. You rub it onto your your bottom or your thigh, or and it's absorbed through the skin. The spray is applied in a similar way. It just is in a slightly different formulation. It just dries a little bit quicker. It's a fine mist, again, that you absorb through the skin. And you apply both the gel and the spray every day, whereas the patch is a little clear plastic, almost like a mini plaster that you put on to your bottom or thigh or upper leg, and you change those twice a week. And it still delivers estrogen through the skin in the same way as the gel and the spray.
And in terms of the dosage, does that kind of they can all have a similar dosage, can there? It's not, for example, like the gel is slightly lighter or smaller in dosage, and the patches are more.
So there's different strengths. So the patch comes in different strengths, and the gel is a different dose depending on how many pumps you use, and the spray is a different dose depending on how many sprays you use. So you can guesstimate what an equivalent patch dose would be to spray dose to gel, just by however many sprays or pumps you use, and what the strength of the patch is.
And recently, there's obviously been quite a lot of talk around testosterone, and in improving your sex life. And again, just talk me through that. It's the cream, and what's the benefits of that?
Testosterone is a whole podcast on its own.
I know. I bet was one of some of the questions that we had was like, what's this about testosterone? Will it give me my sex life back?
Testosterone is a hotly, kind of passionately debated subject at the moment. So there's been some headlines where it's really been like, testosterone is the third female hormone. It's a game changer. Everybody should be on it. It's going to give you your life back. And then there's a flip argument to that, in that the data that we have at the moment has proven that if you have a very low libido, that by taking testosterone, if you have a low testosterone, can help improve that libido. Now, some women claim that it helps with cognitive function and mood and get up and go and joie de vivre and those kind of things. We don't have the data at the moment to support that. We have a lot of women anecdotally saying it has done for them, but we can't say we have the scientific evidence at the moment. So there is hopefully going to be a study looking into lots of aspects of testosterone and proving or not proving what it can and can't do. My thoughts are it probably does do more than libido. Just basing that on the fact that if you have a man, or you have men, and they take medication to block their testosterone, they lose more than their libido. Yes, their libido goes, but all sorts of other areas of their well-being disappear. And I would think that there would be a similar effect in women, but we're just we're waiting to find out. But there are significant numbers of women in this country now on testosterone replacement. We do prescribe it in my clinic, and appropriately. And it comes in, so there is no female product that is licensed for use on the NHS. That's the problem. So NHS GPs or NHS gynecologists who are prescribing it have to use the male product off license. And so that causes some concern both for doctors and for patients. So when you go to prescribe it, a big red box flashes up saying caution, this is off license. And when you receive it as a woman, then the box is and the information leaflet is designed for men. So it can be it's a bit frightening, and it's not ideal. But again, it's absorbed through the skin. It comes as a gel, and you use it in female doses. So you titrate down to female doses under under the guidance of your doctor.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the thing, is just bringing it back to that, is making sure you've had those real conversations with your doctor, you know, and finding a specialist or finding a doctor that you can be open with and you can talk about this, so that you've had that level of investigation before you kind of go out there or just, you know, kind of get a hold of it or get it prescribed, because there needs to be that level of investigation. And as you say, hopefully with a study potentially coming in the future, then it might be more widely available in a proper format designed for women.
There is a female product that is imported under a special license from Australia called Androfem that we prescribe privately. So that is designed, you know, it's licensed for female use. It's designed for women. It comes in a pink. It's got a pink, a pink box and a pink tube, and but it's not available on the NHS yet. But that's as a cream. It comes as a cream rather than as a gel.
But again, so if you were really struggling and, you know, you thought, actually, I can do this privately, then you can afford to do that privately. Then there are things that you can look into. And like you say, hopefully at some point we may get a version on the NHS, which would be great for so many women, because I think the area of people's like sex lives and libido is such a key thing for relationships. You know, if we're talking about like early 40s, kind of late 30s women who might have just, you know, started a family and, you know, all this kind of life choices, you're in this place. The last thing you want is to kind of be going through, well, anybody really, to be going through that phase where your partner feels like there's just lots of confusion, there's not enough communication. So it can be a massive thing, can't it, within relationships?
Absolutely. I mean, it causes relationship breakdown. So it's not something that should be kind of belittled or ignored at all. It just needs to be done right. And just going back to kind of, yes, you can get it privately. So Androfem is available privately, but in one of the downsides to what's happened with the menopause bubble is that now there are lots and lots of people who purport to be menopause doctors or menopause specialists or menopause gurus, or and people prescribing testosterone who perhaps don't know what they're doing. So you need to be careful if you're going to go down a private route. You need to make sure that you are seeing a specialist. The British Menopause Society have got a list of accredited specialists and specialist clinics. You need to make sure that your clinic is CQC registered. So you do have to be careful with Google and finding the cheapest, and that you are getting somebody that knows what they're doing, because testosterone replacement, it needs monitoring. You've got to have bloods done. You've got to make sure that you're seeing somebody that knows how to interpret those bloods.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Like you women being desperate to kind of regain their selves, their health, who they are, their confidence, and that is quite a sad thing, really, that you are getting, people kind of purporting to be something that perhaps they're not, because women are so desperate for it and want the help and need the help as well. Just moving away from kind of the HRT route, what other lifestyle kind of changes can women make to start, to ease symptoms of menopause, perimenopause?
You can do a lot with lifestyle. So a lot of women find that when they are first experiencing perimenopausal symptoms, they have things like insomnia and anxiety and fatigue, and they have cravings for sugary food to give them, a quick hit, and they feel tired and they don't want to exercise, or they feel anxious and they reach for wine in the evening, and then they wake up in the middle of the night and they don't get proper sleep, and then they wake up up in the morning. They've got to get everybody out to school, to work. They have 3 cups of coffee because otherwise they're exhausted, and you can end up getting into this lifestyle of this self-medication spiral, which is based on coffee and alcohol and sugar. And it's really, really important to identify those factors and to break them, because no matter how much HRT you're given, if you are doing all of those things, you're still going to feel rubbish. So simple kind of lifestyle tweaks that are they're much easier said than done. It is easy for me to sit here and say it, and it can be very hard to do it in practice, but it does work. So caffeine for some women is awful. it makes you feel like you're about to stand up in front of 3,000 people and give a talk on something you don't know.
That's me. I can only have it in tiny doses when I know I'm not going to be doing anything really stressful, because I am very susceptible to it. It gives me the worst racing heart, and like you say, the nerves, like you suddenly feel like, oh my gosh, and it's awful.
It's horrible, but women don't realize that, so they don't link the two things, because it may be that they've drunk coffee all their life, or that they've just kind of been so tired that they're just drinking one more or just two more, and they don't really link the two. But I normally say, it doesn't make me very popular, but I normally say just try cutting it out for 3 weeks, because you'll go through a period of withdrawal, which feels even worse. But then when you've gone through that, it is so much better. And the same with alcohol. So again, you can go through a week or two where it feels awful because you're not sleeping, because you haven't got that initial sedative effect. But then afterwards, when you kind of break through that, it's so much better, and you sleep properly and you feel refreshed the next day, and then you don't need to rely on something else to kind of pick you up the next day. Diet and sugar, again, it's easy for me to sit and say this, but you need to really focus on not having those quick fix sugar hits, because you get a massive high of blood sugar, and then you get a massive insulin surge, and then you get a trough that comes very quickly afterwards. And then that doesn't make you feel very good. It makes you feel knackered, but also it makes you put weight on, which then makes it harder to exercise. And so the very thing that you should be trying to do to make yourself feel better is actually harder, because you've put weight on. So you've got to lose more weight and carry more weight when you're doing the exercise. So it's those interplay of all of those things.
Everything you've said there is everything that like I've started to notice over the last couple of years. And it's something like, I'm lucky because my husband is a personal trainer, and he does have a lot of female clients, and we talk about this quite frequently. But I'm really, over the last year, have kind of started to really overhaul how I kind of approach things. Yes, I'll still have my glasses of wine, but not all the time. Like, I save it now to like maybe 1 to 2 days a week max, and that might be literally 1 or 2 glasses of wine, and I have to be really strict with that, because I notice that my mood, my sleep, my everything, and as you said, the next thing that happens in the morning, you have the coffee, and then you'll go, oh, I really, really want something. Oh, I don't know what I want, but I need something. It's sweet. I need sweet something, even to the point where I've had like honey on toast, because I'm going, I just need something. And then, the pounds start to creep up, and then it's just like, wait a minute, this is a really downward spiral unless I kind of get a hold of it. So I've increased my exercise, like I say, cut back massively on the drinks and things that I have, cutting out coffee throughout the day, and honestly I feel so much better. Like, I feel like I've got a hold on this. And you wish you could kind of say to women, I know it's really hard, like those first few weeks, and it is incredibly difficult, but once you start putting that into a routine and you keep to it, the benefits are massive. And you also will notice changes, I think, quicker. You start to go, actually, oh, I had a couple of extra glasses of wine. I've not felt like that for a long time. And you hold yourself more accountable, I think.
Yeah. I would just having that awareness can make so much difference. So the other thing is sugary drinks. So the ones that almost advertise themselves as being kind of good for you. Like probably I won't say the brand names, but you know what I mean.
I do know which the energy drinks and the all of those.
If you're feeling tired, have this energy. It's liquid sugar, and it just does exactly the same thing as a bag of sweets would do. It just gives you a massive glucose surge, and yes, you feel great for those 10 minutes, but then you have the payback time afterwards. So just stay away from everything like that, and it really works. It does work. So there are some women where if they can take HRT, they almost need the estrogen just in order to facilitate the exercise. And there are a group of women who are like that. But on the whole, like, massive sweeping statement, I know, but those four things make a massive difference to practically everyone.
And the thing is as well with exercise, you can incorporate it relatively quickly, I think. So for example, like one of the things I started doing was I'd walk my son to school to make sure I had to do it, to just get my heart rate going. And then once we started doing that walk, it became, oh, well, now I've dropped him off, I'm going to just run back. And just those little things that you can, because it's so hard, isn't it, as women at this age of our lives where we've got so many things to do and we're juggling, like you say, there could be older parents, and it's how to get those things into what's already in your day. And my husband will say to me, you know, even 10 minutes of like press ups or, you know, just things that you could do that just you're having to use your body weight to do things to kind of build muscle, that will help you as well. And just switching things up so that you're not having as many carbs and maybe having more protein. And you can get kind of now, you know, protein yogurts that you can have on the go, or protein drinks that you can have on the go if you're not getting enough in a meal, which you should be, but we all know what it's like on the go. Then there's these little things that will hopefully keep your hunger at bay and keep your sugar levels level. It's just looking at those little tiny things. In fact, I think I'm going to do a post about this. You've now made me think about it, and these like 10-minute things or just like easy on the go things, because it's like you say, once we get a hold on it and listen to our bodies and start being in tune with our bodies, then we can really start taking ownership of it, can't we?
It just needs a bit of thought. It just to start off with, and a bit of determination to start off with, and then it becomes just part of how you live your life. You don't even think about it. It's like you just don't think. I used to drink quite a lot of Diet Coke, and I don't even remember why I stopped, but I stopped, and I've not had one for years, and I just don't even think about it. It's just kind of how
getting out of the habits of things, isn't it? And introducing new routines, like you say. I have got some listener questions, like I said. I mean, I did have loads, but literally I've had to keep them down. But one lady said, and I thought this was really interesting, she had a hysterectomy in 2013, but she's still suffering from brain fog and hot flashes. And she just was like, when will this ever end?
So if you have a hysterectomy, you don't necessarily lose your ovaries. So it would depend on whether she had her ovaries out at the time or not. If she did, then she would have gone into what we call a surgical menopause, which is a sudden, you know, overnight loss of hormone. And they can be the women that really experience the menopause the worst. So they have the worst time. And sometimes hot flushes and things and brain fog don't get better. They sometimes do with time, but sometimes they don't. And we if you can use HRT, that would be the first, you know, that would be the first conversation, even though it's been such a long time, because it sounds like symptoms are really debilitating, and you then have to have a risk benefit conversation. But I suppose the short answer to that is sometimes they don't get better. It's kind of the luck of the draw.
So that potentially could continue to go on, or just
It can do.
Okay. I think this is a similar kind of question really to what we were talking about before, but this lady is 45. Doctors told her that she's not menopausal, but she says she's stressed, she's angry, she's upset. Am I going mad? I really don't know what to do.
So we see this all the time in clinic. That's our bread and butter. So if you're over 45 and you have symptoms like that, which is highly suggestive of the perimenopause, and you want to take HRT, that would be the first thing that you would try.
Right.
And most of the time it just corrects the loss of estrogen, and you feel better.
We've got a lady here that said she was prescribed the Mirena coil because I have heavy periods, but I've also heard it can ease perimenopause symptoms. Is this true? There's a lot of talk about the Mirena coil, actually, isn't there?
It's a really brilliant tool in the perimenopause and menopause. So so when you give estrogen as part of HRT, you have to give progesterone as well to protect the lining of the womb from the additional estrogen. And it's one way of delivering that progesterone is in the form of the coil. So you have it fitted, and then it's in there for 5 years, and you just don't even have to worry about it. So it's one alternative. But why it's particularly good is it controls bleeding. So it is used even in non-menopausal and perimenopausal women as a treatment for heavy periods or problematic periods. It doesn't treat the loss of estrogen, so it does not replace estrogen. But what it does do is it seems to sometimes just level out symptoms, especially kind of cyclical symptoms. And we don't really understand how that works. And it wouldn't be your typical go-to solution to somebody's perimenopausal symptoms, but it's part of a toolkit that we use. And if you've got somebody that's got a uterus and they need progesterone, it's brilliant. But it's not your kind of HRT on its own kind of a solution normally.
And we've got a lady here that says she can't have HRT because of chemotherapy. Am I getting that right? She's maybe been on chemotherapy, but she's something to do with her cancer, and she can't have HRT. So what does she do?
So if you have a history of breast cancer or endometrial cancer, or sometimes a few other more rare conditions, then you can be advised that HRT is contraindicated, which basically means you shouldn't take it. And then it depends on what your symptoms are. So there are a number of different options for symptom relief, but it depends on those symptoms as to what medication you would be offered. So if you have hot flushes, then you might be offered something. If you had low mood, you might be offered something else. So it just depends. So there are options, but it is kind of symptom dependent. Now, we often see people come to us who say, I've been told I can't take HRT because I've had bowel cancer or melanoma or something like that. But the reasons that they've been told they can't take HRT are not always true. So it's just about working out actually whether or not you can use it. Sometimes you can't, but a lot of the time you actually can. And if you can't, then there are different alternatives, as well as, of course, all the lifestyle changes and potential herbal remedies and CBT and psychological therapies and things. So there are lots of different things that can be done.
And are there any groups of women other than like women that have, like you said, have gone through breast cancer, bowel cancer? Are there any other groups of women that wouldn't be able to have HRT? Like they could be really, sensitive to certain hormones, or would it be okay for most women?
Most women tolerate it. Most women get on well with it, but it can take adjustments. So it's not, especially in the perimenopause where you've got this hormonal moving target, then you can get side effects from it. Sometimes it will work and then stop working. Sometimes it will make women feel not very well. Some women are progesterone sensitive, so the progesterone that we give, they can have an adverse reaction to. So it can, and I think that's where a lot of women feel like HRT is not for them, and then they're left high and dry, especially with with a GP who isn't a specialist, who doesn't know how to manage those more complex situations. But so yes, there are some women who do really struggle with it. We normally get there in the end, but it can take it can be a really big journey, and it can take a lot of adjustments and a lot of perseverance, and it can be challenging.
And if you were to start on HRT, I think there are some other worries with women that you potentially could feel worse, is it, before you feel better, like mentally especially, is there that kind of element as well, and how long would those like symptoms last before you kind of have a breakthrough?
Certainly it can make you feel worse, like any medication. You can get side effects. And we see quite a lot of women who are sensitive to the progesterone. So there are a number of different types of progestogens that are prescribed. There's the body identical progesterone Nutrigestan that tends to have the fewest side effects, but even that can give particularly distressing side effects. So it can make you feel very PMSy. It can make you feel very fearful, very can make you feel anxious. On the flip side, it can make you feel brilliant, and it can be very calming, and it's just the luck of the draw how it's going to affect the individual.
So really then it's about kind of opening up a dialogue with your doctor, with your specialist, and just kind of hopefully trying these things until you find something really that works for you, which then leads me to, I suppose, like in terms of menopause care in general, you know, obviously women that get to see you and your team are, you know, very fortunate, and you've got this amazing specialist team, but how can we get to that place where that your kind of care is available for all women? You know, is that something that in the medical profession that, you know, it is changing, or is it not, or what more do we need to do?
I think that the patients that we see now in clinic are different to those that we saw even just 18 months, 2 years ago. So we used to get just, you know, very, very straightforward cases of women who just couldn't get HRT, and they wanted HRT, and they came to us and we gave them HRT completely appropriately. But I think that GPs are now getting much, much better at doing exactly what they should be doing, which is the management of straightforward menopause. And so we tend to see just more complex cases now where they might have been to their GP and for whatever reason, it's not gone quite right, and they've had side effects, or it's not worked, or there's been some problem with it, or bleeding. Those are the patients that come to us quite appropriately now. So I think it's better. I really do. I really, really do think it's getting better. And you cannot expect GPs to be specialists, and I absolutely stick with that. You can't. They see everything, you know, they see absolutely everything. There's no way that they can have the experience to be specialists in menopause management. It's great if you do have a doctor in your surgery that happens to have that as their specialist interest, but you can't blame them if they don't. But they should be able to do the basic management, and I think they are. There will always be disagreement. So when, you know, for every 99 people that say this is brilliant, everybody's talking about it, finally there's a dialogue, there will always be somebody that says, oh, you're medicalizing something that's natural. It's a natural process. Women should just be getting on with it. What are they whinging about? It's just people making money. You know, you can't win. You can't have, you know, I've just learned to just head down, just...
But in a way though, like, you know, it's kind of, I've had this conversation. I mean, it's really great. I think that I'm pretty right in thinking that menopause and perimenopause will be taught in secondary schools from 2024. I think that's the case going forward, which is brilliant, because that's the problem, that we've stopped the education around women's health, kind of pregnancy, and that's it. You know, there's not been anything after that. And there's this whole group, this massive section of life that's just like, oh yeah, well, we don't really need to talk about that, which is, you know, I'm sorry, it is very misogynistic, because it's like, well, you're done now with having the babies. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that. We don't really care about you now. You know, who cares? So it's reframing this period of life, isn't it? And making it not scary, making it not aging and not scary, and just the next little bit. It's not, like we said, there's quite a long way, especially before we get to full menopause, which is that whole year without having a period, which, you know, can happen a lot later, but can happen younger as well. But that transitional phase, we really need to reframe the narrative around that. And I think we're both on the same page with this, of going, come on, let's get talking. I mean, what's next for you? Like, obviously you've done this the incredible book, you've got Menopause Care as a support platform. What's next for you in terms of kind of spreading that message?
I think I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing, I think. I mean, it would be really nice to do another book, and it's lovely doing things like podcasts like we're doing today. My passion is just educating women so that they can make the decision for them, and they can know that they are doing the right thing for them. I can't tell people what they should or shouldn't be doing. It's a personal decision. I don't think HRT is right for everyone. I think it's right for a lot of people, and I don't think we're medicalizing the menopause. We're just educating. You know, that's all we're doing, and I think that's how it should be. And I love talking to, I feel like that's my kind of skill set, is translating the medicine to the layperson so that they can understand what to do. And whether that's podcasts or books or magazine articles or newspapers or TV or whatever, it's just about keeping the conversation going, I think, isn't it? And hoping that this menopause bubble doesn't burst, so that in 10 years' time everybody says, oh, do you remember 10 years ago everyone was talking about the menopause? What a whole load of nonsense. And then, do you know what I mean?
I'm in complete agreement with you. And I think, very much like the way that post-pregnancy was dealt with, there were many women that suffered in silence when they'd had postnatal depression, that they didn't talk about it. And if we think about like that kind of movement, what happened and how those women are now looked after, and it's kind of, we really give it the gravitas that it deserves. I'm really hoping that this conversation, which is the next phase really, which I'm hoping that this conversation will have the same importance and the same gravitas as a move forward from that phase into the next phase. It's the next taboo that we are kind of breaking down and kind of making sure we are shouting about it and getting taken seriously, because as we said right at the start, when we think about the generations that have gone before us, but also the generations that even now are still trying to tap into and make sure that those younger women can make choices about when they want to have children, what's the possibility of perimenopause, how might that affect their mental health, their bone health, so they're going to be empowered to make better decisions about their life and health and well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you look at something like childbirth, and which is a completely natural process, and pregnancy, getting pregnant, pregnancy, childbirth, all completely natural processes. But with modern medicine, we have enabled women to get pregnant who were not going to get pregnant, to stay pregnant when they were not going to stay pregnant, and to deliver babies in a really, really safe way. Now that is advances in medicine, in the same way that I view advances in menopause care, is that yes, it is a natural process, but so many other things that we need to be. And just by providing help, you're helping women to not experience debilitating symptoms. So I don't see how that is over medicalizing something that's a natural process, personally. And I just hope that we can keep on kind of persuading everybody.
Well, I agree with you, because our world is different. We didn't live like this, in natural, as a natural state of being. We never had technology. We weren't, our brains weren't dealing with all the things that we're dealing with now. We live in a completely different world and need those things to help us to deal with the world that we live in. We don't live in prehistoric times where it was just, we'll be completely natural. We need to survive and we need to have children, and our world is a completely different place, and so therefore that makes sense that we would need extra help in other areas. So I think we're definitely on the same page. And just before we go, I just want to ask you quickly, what are your go-tos to protect your own well-being? What are the things that you reach for, or the practices that you follow?
Well, I didn't really think about it, and I suppose it just kind of evolved as part of my part of my kind of toolkit, coping with all my ridiculous numbers of small children. But running, I run, so I make time to run at least 4 or 5 times a week, and that means my work day starts later as a result of it. But it's the only it keeps me sane. And I've always eaten well, and so I just continue to do that and just watch the booze. And I can't drink coffee. I never have, and I've always dabbled with it. It always just looks like a really nice thing to do. Like I've always really wanted to have a really nice coffee. Every time I try it, it just sends me bananas. And so that's why I kind of know how it feels when women haven't identified it. So those are my go-to. But I love running.
I'm the same. I love running. For me, and I think there's a chemical change that happens to me when I'm running as well, where I kind of go, oh, I'm back to normal again now, and I feel better. And it's that peace and quiet, and nobody kind of, especially with you, you've got 5 children, but where you're like, oh, nobody's wanting you for 5 minutes. Like, just give myself a half an hour where I'm not hearing mum, literally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Naomi, we have run out of time for today, but honestly, it has been so wonderful to have you with me and, to just have your expertise and your insight. I just know that this is going to be a really valuable episode for our listeners, so thank you.
It's a pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
You can follow Naomi on her Instagram at Dr._Naomi Potter, and you can also head to www.menopauseCare.co.uk for more help and support with menopause and perimenopause. And Menopausing by Naomi and Davina McCall is also available online and in all good bookshops. Definitely go to the website, visit Naomi on Instagram and get the book. Honestly, make it part of your toolkit. It will really, really help you.
Can I do a little shout out to the midweek menopause madness that I do with Lisa Snowdon as well?
100%. We love Lisa here. We absolutely love Lisa. So so midweek menopause madness also with our lovely Lisa Snowdon. So make sure you check that out on Instagram as well. And for more well-being, fashion and beauty, you can visit us at our website, www.thecapsule.co.uk, where you can also catch up with our previous podcast episodes by visiting the In Conversation page and subscribing to any of our podcast channels and YouTube. As always, please feel free to leave your rates and reviews. It's always lovely to hear from you. You can also drop us a message at our Instagram at Official Capsule. And also, we are very excited, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, to be hosting the first Capsule live event of this year dedicated to myth-busting perimenopause and menopause. It is the Peri-Meno Meetup, and it's happening this Thursday at the Leeds Marriott. And so if you haven't grabbed tickets, then get yours now. There's still a couple remaining, so just go to the events page on our website or to our Instagram channel. Now, after all that, all that's left for me to say today is goodbye. So it's goodbye from Naomi.
Thank you. Goodbye. Lovely to see you.
And goodbye from me. Bye-bye.